Hi, my name is Regina Durst, and I will be presenting Clearing Muddy Waters, Investigating the Viability of Market-Based Instruments as a Tool for Water Quality Improvement. And this is for 492 as part of our final symposium. So as many people know, pollution is one of the biggest dangers to our common pool water resources today. In this presentation, I will be talking specifically about nutrient pollution and on an even smaller scope, nitrogen and phosphorus. So when nitrogen and phosphorus are put into waters or waterways, what often ends up happening is that algae begins to grow very excessively and very quickly. And algal blooms can damage ecosystems and break down food webs when grown at this scale. And this severely impacts a multitude of aquatic-centered industries, not only fishing, but anything surrounding the lake, the ocean, including tourism and water sports. And this puts the livelihoods of millions of people at risk, anyone who lives around or works around those industries. Not only that, but algal blooms actually also endanger the general public with health issues, including simple things such as skin rashes when coming into contact with algae, but also very serious issues such as neurological impediments and long-term respiratory problems that last much after the algae is gone. So when people think about water pollution, usually the image that pops into their head is this idea of, a big pipe with dark water coming out of it, and that's being pumped into a lake or a stream. And this isn't necessarily always the case. That might be the case with point sources like wastewater treatment facilities or with industrial plants, but much of the nutrient pollution comes from non-point sources, which are just general runoff that occurs from your yard or from industrial operations, and you know runs off into the surrounding waterways and watershed. So, with all these diverse sources of pollution, one has to ask, well, how can we respond to this? And so, for my internship with American Farmland Trust, I conducted literature reviews. I examined state legislature. I looked at federal policy, and I was doing all this to evaluate how a market-based tool known as water quality trading could be used in Washington. And so, water quality trading encourages non point sources, such as farmers, to reduce their emissions by implementing best management practices. And by implementing these practices, they can reduce and sell that reduction in the form of a credit to point sources who often have to spend a lot more money to implement high tech solutions to reduce the same or even less uh, um, of the emission. And so, both parties are benefiting in this situation. So, supplemental income is being given to farmers and landowners. And on the end of the point source, you could imagine that they're saving money because it is cheaper in the long run to. To just purchase these credits than it is for them to buy a high-tech solution. And overall, ecosystem improvements occur because the amount of emissions overall is being reduced. So with my research, I found that there are not really any policy barriers to this program being implemented, especially here in Washington state. But there are a lot of social barriers occurring. And there are many worries on both the side of the buyer and the seller. So, for example, buyers worry that offsetting isn't a sustainable solution for the long term. Uh, there is this fear of, I suppose, injustice, perhaps, that farmers who have already implemented best management practices, they aren't going to get that supplemental income because they have no further reduction that can be made. Um, and that people who have not been practicing good stewardship are going to get this financial boost because they were late to the game, which, you know, does not seem fair. But there are also other concerns, such as there simply aren't enough buyers and sellers that exist in the same watershed, or that sellers, non point sources, believe that this kind of participation in this voluntary program is going to lead to future regulation. And that is because currently they're not being regulated. And so there is definitely this concern that it seems to be insurmountable. Some of these barriers do seem easily solved, but some of them don't have really clear cut solutions. And so the question that remains for me, and I hope remains for you, is that it is a question of, is water quality trading worth it? Is this a program um, that we want to put our resources towards? Do we want to allocate them here, or would they have a greater impact elsewhere on other, perhaps more direct programs? And I think that that is the question that I want to leave you with in your mind. If you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. Please contact me through Twitter. My at is rsdurst, which is seen in the upper right corner. Thank you for listening.